Hey everybody, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys enjoyed the other reviews sweeping this channel. I think I just did the Power of the Dog review, so hope you guys are enjoying that review, the lengthy review that it is. Um, we're gonna do, as I alluded to on this channel in the last video, we're gonna do Tick Tick Boom now as the next review. Um, and I think at that point I would be caught up with all the big Netflix releases. I know that there's Halle Berry's directorial debut, Bruised. I'm not really sure if I want to see that. I don't know. It hasn't really caught my interest. The trailers seemed okay, you know. It seemed like a typical boxing drama. Not really, I don't know, not really that interested. So maybe I'll give it a watch. I don't know, but other than that, I think I would have been caught up. I know that Don't Look Up comes out pretty soon here, the next Adam McKay film, so I'll definitely make sure to watch that. Because big cast, and I like Adam McKay as a filmmaker, so that will definitely get a review. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else from Netflix that I've missed, because Netflix I missed a lot of movies. Um, if I think of any, I'll definitely do a review for. If you guys have any other films that you would like me to review and watch, because I'm playing catch up from this year. So if there's any films that came out this year that are on streaming, like I have like pretty much all the streaming services, so you can just relay to me what film you would be interested to see me review. But for the time being, I think it'll be um, Tick Tick Boom, and then my next review, um, it might be another streaming one. I'm not sure. We'll see. I might do The Harder They Fall next. I don't know. That would be probably the only other one that I would be interested to see from Netflix. I think that would complete the trifecta of Netflix releases, the ones that I have missed and the ones that I'm most interested in. But that's, you know, we'll see what happens in the next video. But let's talk about Tick Tick Boom. So Tick Tick Boom is the directorial debut of Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's pretty much done, he's pretty much an entertainer. He doesn't really fall into into one particular category. He's most well known as a musician and a songwriter, um, but he's also an actor. He's also a rapper. He's also a producer. He's pretty much done everything but filmmaking. He hasn't done anything directorial wise, which kind of in some ways surprises me because considering just all the stuff that he has done over the years, I'm surprised that he hasn't taken a jab at directing uh, uh, until now, you know. Um, and Tick Tick Boom is a musical. So um, here's the thing about me and musicals. We have an on and off type relationship. Sometimes we get along, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we need some distance. And by the way, I have notes as we all as always. As with the case with In the Heights earlier this year, which was another film that Lin-Manuel Miranda provided a lot of his uh, himself provided a lot of his style to. By the way, if you hear stuff in the background, family and stuff. Um, but but in the case of In the Heights, um, I just felt kind of abused in some manner, like the abundance um, of uh, of musical numbers. Like literally at one point there was three musical numbers back to back, and I felt that that was just a bit excessive, a bit overwhelming. Um, so like that's typically how I feel a lot of times when I enter musicals. Sometimes it's a bit too much, and then other times it's satisfying to a point. Very rarely have I found a musical. I mean, my favorite musical of all time is actually Singing in the Rain. I love Singing in the Rain. I think it's just a great balance between, music and style and story. I think that it just all of it melts well, and it just creates something very spirited and um, joyous. I just feel so happy watching that movie. I feel so happy every time I think about it. It's just one of those films where it just gives you such um, such a such a happy feeling. Um, so um, transitioning now to Tick Tick Boom, um, I can safely say this: Tick Tick Boom has some good things and some issues that we'll get into. But for starters, I think that the obvious is that the musical numbers are really good. Um, they're easily the best thing of the film. I would say they're quite a thrill, and to use a word I just used, joyous, to really see unfold. Because I think like it's not as involved as In the Heights was. Because In the Heights, like they were going from like from city from like from city streets to pools to inside areas. Like Tick Tick Boom is very much isolated, um, but it's still very entertaining and very engaging when we're in those musical numbers. And I'd say that that's the most consistent thing that Miranda brings to film is that he knows how to coordinate these sequences really well. He knows what to he knows how to bring life to these sequences as well. Like the songs themselves are also just really infectious. You know, they're really fun to hear, and they they are a little one dimensional, but the ride that you have with them is worth having. It's just a really fun and uh, in some cases emotionally charged uh, uh, ride to be on. So, um, and speaking of emotions, the emotions really kicked into gear towards the end, towards the climax in particular. Um, I think that that's where our levels start to dial up, and I think that that's when you begin to feel the weight of what's being talked about. Even as I said earlier, that it really boils down to one idea. Um, like the idea of Tick Tick Boom is about values. I mean, that's learning what's more valuable to you and finding that balance in your life. Within within understanding those values, finding some balance in your own life. Um, so it's not really speaking too big, but when we get to that climax, even though it is one idea that they're holding on to, um, the resonance is earned, and you really see the narrative at its best um, in the third act, in my particular opinion. Um, Andrew Garfield is pretty solid here. I would say he's fairly good here. I've always enjoyed him. I've always enjoyed him as a performer. I would argue that he's probably the best Spider-Man that we've ever had in terms of a performance, because Tobey Maguire's was obviously more comic book. Uh, Tom Holland's is a lot more geared towards younger generation, and Andrew Garfield's is the most realistic. And I kind of like my superheroes to be a little bit more grounded, but also earn that realism. And I feel like Andrew Garfield's performance does earn that. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be grim and all that stuff. It feels natural. Um, so I enjoyed him in that. I also enjoyed him in Hacksaw Ridge. So I think I don't think he's fair. I don't think he's necessarily underrated, but I think that he's good, and I think he proves that more in Tick Tick Boom, because his singing ability. I will admit, the first time he started singing, like the first time, I immediately thought, like, wait, is that auto tune? Like, that was the first thing that popped in my head. Like the very very first time that he started singing, I thought, no, is that auto tune? No, I thought it was, but then I was wrong. Um, or at least I think I was wrong. I don't know. The first time that he sang, it sounded pretty strange. But beyond that, though, like his singing ability is strong, and he himself is very charismatic in the film. The one detail that I actually really liked um, that about his performance is that he always seems tired. Like this character seems really tired. You can see it on his face. Like there's a shot of him going into an elevator, and he just looks tired. You could see, the the exhaustion in his face and in his eyes. Like you could see it, and I think that that's a nice detail that Andrew brought to his character. Andrew brought to the character. Um, and it's clearly a role that he is also passionate about. Like there's loads of energy, and I think he earns it for the most part, particularly when it came to the musical numbers. So um, so you have a fairly good performance in Andrew Garfield. You have you get a decent third act, and the musical numbers are all really good. So why is it that I don't love Tick Tick Boom? Um, so I bring up In the Heights because it's really the best comparison I can give to Tick Tick Boom, in that it matches the same strengths and also the same weaknesses. Um, because the greatest aspect that both films hold are the musical numbers. That's easily the best thing about In the Heights and Tick Tick Boom. Um, it's when the music stops do we see the issues start to show. And here it is unfortunately with Lin-Manuel Miranda, with his direction. I feel that the direction shows its flaws in looking for emotional draw outside the music, because when you're in the musical numbers, you do get some emotional resonance. I think that it more so kicks in when you enter the last like 20 minutes, um, because before that, what you're given is a narrative that falls into standard musical adaptation issues, meaning that like it has a hard time trying to balance its story with its music, um, because I can literally name like two sequences. One of them I think is a very important part of the film. I think it's like the jumping off point, something that happens very early on with Andrew Garfield's character that could have absolutely do without music because it felt completely unnecessary for music to be there. Um, And I know that there's this belief or this idea within musicals that music has to pop in after a certain amount of time, and that may be true for theater, but but film works very differently than the stage. And for me, again, just for me, I think that translating musicals into cinematic language, there has to be there has to be room given for the cinematic elements to play and for them to breathe and blossom and not give dominance to the theatrical elements. Um, because it creates an imbalance within the narrative and within your own viewing experience, because you're kind of like, I see good stuff, but I also recognize a story that's having a hard time keeping things on the same frequency, you know? Um, like one of those sequences that I mentioned was, I won't spoil anything, but it's a very important decision that John makes very early on. It's a predictable one at that. I mean, just one of the other issues with the movie is that it's a predictable story. It's not anything, you know, like shocking or, you know, like, oh my gosh, I didn't never saw that coming sort of thing. It's a very typical predictable story about a struggling artist, you know. Um, but there's a scene early on where, like I said, I think it's the jumping off point for the story. And instead of the film, you know, calming down and, you know, really allowing us to soak in this moment, what ends up happening is that a musical number is played within that scene. And what comes across is a scene that feels digestible and, quite frankly, humorous in some manner. And for me, I felt that that was not how that scene should have felt. And to me, that's also how a couple of scenes in this felt like. Um, like it felt like the tone just shifted, or the tone created the the musical numbers create a certain tone that I feel is just not fitting for the scenes. Like certain scenes should have no music whatsoever. Um, and I just feel like the Lin-Manuel Miranda was not, um, like that. I feel like that is more or less because of Lin-Manuel Miranda's choices as the filmmaker. Um, because there's a certain way that he navigates within his story in Tick Tick Boom. Like there's kind of a narration element. I won't spoil it, but um, and that narration element does sometimes get in the way of the story that the narration is trying to tell us. You know, Um, so um, and that narration has its own musical numbers, and at some points it does get in the way of where I think the actual uh, where our attention should have been. So um, and I can give that same criticism for the editing because at points it feels pretty standard, not really understanding. Um, like there are times where the scenes should have been kept going with one particular shot versus uh, uh, cutting back and forth to like the singing and the circumstance, because it once again takes away from the emotional draw, and displays more to the idea that uh, what you're watching is from a developing filmmaker and not someone who clearly has established themselves or has their own style and feel. It really feels like you're watching the work of somebody who is still developing their own voice. So, um, because what you have in the end really is you have a story that is following familiar beats that makes makes the navigation a bit predictable and not as enthralling or rich as it believes to be, because the film makes it's making it sound the film believes that it's like speaking really big when really, as I said earlier, it kind of boils down to one idea, which is about like values and finding that balance within it. um, and I don't and I think that it's hindered and brought down by standard direction and a real lack of emotional resonance. Because a lot of Lin-Manuel Miranda's choices as a filmmaker, I feel like, um, got in the way of that of us finding some emotional draw throughout the entire film. Like I said, the third act is when things actually that's where I started to actually uh, uh, feel something. Throughout the second and first act, I just felt kind of oh, mediocre at best. Um, but you have compelling performances. You have, I would say, some really well done musical numbers, and as I just addressed, a well structured third act. But I feel like this could have been better under more experienced hands. I don't know, maybe like a Damien Chazelle or somebody. I don't know. I feel like under a more experienced filmmaker, I feel like this would have worked really well. But because we are watching a directorial debut, it does have its issues. So, and I think that that really is the weakness to Tick Tick Boom, because I feel like if we had someone else behind it, I feel like this movie would have worked a lot better. But as it stands, it's a fairly told story. It's not terrible, nor is it anything spectacular. It's fine. It's totally fine. I would say it's better than In the Heights, because I didn't feel like the musical numbers were excessive. I just felt like they were not well placed. Um, and I said like maybe one or two could have been removed. It's always a problem with musicals. Like there's always a problem with musical adaptations where they just have too many songs. I don't know if that's just me, but I've always noticed that with musicals nowadays, where they just have too many songs. Like where you could have removed like one or two songs. In the Heights, like three or four songs could have been removed, but typically it's like one or two that I always find where I'm just like, that could have been removed, because what we really need is to focus on the drama of the scene, not try to lighten the scene with music, you know? Um, so, um, so yeah, so Tick Tick Boom is fine. It's fine. I mean, Andrew Garfield's good in it. I don't think he's great in it. I think again the energy is compelling enough, but it doesn't it doesn't turn into anything great. Again, it's similar to Benedict Cumberbatch that I did with Power of the Dog. I thought it was a good performance, but not anything great. Um, um, but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed Tick Tick Boom, but I did not love Tick Tick Boom. So for a directorial debut, it's fine. For I mean, like it's what I would expect from a directorial debut. Let me just put it that way. It's what I would expect from a first-time filmmaker. So, and with that, there's definitely room for improvement. Um, so So yeah, that's my thoughts on Tick Tick Boom. Hope you guys enjoyed it. You guys let me know your thoughts on it. And let me know your thoughts on just musicals in general. Do you guys think that sometimes they just overdo it with the musical numbers? Because it was overkill in the Heights, at least for me. Or do you think that they're perfectly fine in terms of how much music that they implement? And did you guys like Tick Tick Boom? And did you guys also like In the Heights? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And let me know if there's any other films on streaming services that I should watch. Anything in particular from like Hulu, HBO Max. I know that The Matrix is coming out later this month, so we'll definitely review that. Um, and yeah, so that's it for this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Probably another review, because we're playing catch up this month, guys. We got a lot of movies to catch up on. So hey guys, that's gonna be it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys have a safe holiday season. And until then, catch you next time.